That's it. I've had it with this dump. We got no food. We got no jobs. Our pets' heads are falling off. Okay.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and the review embargo is over for the newest MCU film, Captain Marvel, which opens this weekend. I hadn't planned to cover it, to be honest, but I came across an interesting review of the film from Oliver Jones at Observer.com and thought I should perform a vivisection because his words don't add up to his movie score. For those that don't know, a vivisection refers to the action of cutting into or dissecting a living body. Now, I'm obviously not going to be cutting up any living bodies, but Mr. Jones' review is new and I will be tearing it apart and examining it piece by piece, so it's an apt description. Reviews have been pouring in the last 48 hours or so, and Captain Marvel is already certified fresh with a current rating of 83% from professional critics. Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregator of critic and audience scores and can be very unreliable. I came across this picture on Twitter today from a user who goes by the handle @ScathSealgare, and he's keeping a spreadsheet of the scores on the site. After all the nonsense with Rotten Tomatoes removing the anticipation metric due to customers saying they don't want to see Carol Danvers in action, some people are keeping an eye on the site. In all honesty, Rotten Tomatoes has always been an unreliable tool for measuring the quality of films because they use a binary scoring system, fresh or not fresh, which doesn't measure the level of quality associated from the reviewer. Either way, @ScathSealgare is already seeing discrepancies in the scoring metric, and no matter how he crunches the numbers, he isn't coming up with anything close to the 83% fresh rating. But that's a video for another day. As I previously mentioned, I came across this review from Observer.com's Oliver Jones, a Rotten Tomatoes top critic, in the Twitter sphere and gave it a gander. I came away chuckling to myself over how far he had to deviate from actually talking about the film's quality to say anything positive about it. As we all know, the climate in today's political landscape is very hyperbolic, and consumers have to be more wary than ever who they're receiving their information from, and this includes entertainment news. The amount of overt bias in the media is at an all-time high, and journalists need to be heavily scrutinized. I went to Observer.com and visited their About section to learn more about the site. It stated, Observer offers its sophisticated readership of metropolitan professionals an original take on the latest in news, culture, politics, and luxury, bringing its irreverent sensibility to a national audience. That's about as bland a description as I can imagine, and certainly didn't satisfy my curiosity, so I checked out Mr. Jones' site bio. Oliver Jones is a journalist and critic based in Los Angeles. He covers entertainment, culture, and social justice. He also teaches journalism at Emerson College. I was flabbergasted to learn Mr. Jones not only covers entertainment, but culture and social justice? I was also intrigued that he teaches journalism at Emerson College. Surely that means the man's critiques are above reproach. So I went and dug a little deeper. I located Emerson College's mission statement, and it reads, Emerson College educates students to assume positions of leadership in communications and the arts and to advance scholarship and creative work that brings innovation, depth, and diversity to these disciplines. The mission is informed by core liberal arts values that seek to promote civic engagement, encourage ethical practices, foster respect for human diversity, and inspire students to create and communicate with clarity, integrity, and conviction. I noticed a heavy emphasis on the word diversity. Certainly Emerson College must be among the most diverse campuses in America, a place where all Americans are given a chance to thrive and elevate their station in life, no matter their race, creed, or gender. Even the woke and culturally observant Chelsea Kane would be proud of Emerson, and boy was I right. Wait, over half the campus is white and almost 2/3 are women. If we assume half of the college's 16% international students are white as well, that would bring the total percentage to 64% white students. That's a higher representation than the American population, which is 61% white. Women are also the largest demographic in America at just under 51%. So Emerson College's admissions for the two largest demos in America, whites and women, are overrepresented? What kind of fake diversity racket is this college trying to pull? Alas, I was bamboozled by Emerson's mission statement about diversity, and my suspicions about Mr. Jones' bias in favor of Captain Marvel was all but confirmed. Now let's get to that pesky movie review that just doesn't add up. Now I'm not going to read all of the review, it's linked in the video description, but I am going to cover the pertinent parts and give my razor-sharp analysis. Oliver Jones begins, Brie Larson's lead character in Captain Marvel is told early and often by various bosses and mentors that her decision-making is too frequently based on emotion instead of intellect. It's the kind of instantly recognizable and utterly condescending remark that women have been receiving in workplace performance reviews since time immemorial. In the movie, the assessment is based on no real evidence, which is also generally the case in real life. In both instances, it says more about the evaluator and their discomfort with powerful women than it does about the woman herself. Right off the bat, Jones is into the story because it's tackling the long-standing stereotype that women are overly emotional. Of course, this might not be the best way to introduce the most powerful superhero in the MCU. Is this supposed to be a gripping tale of a single mom who struggles to get her law degree and eventually take down the very men who oppressed her? Or is this a goddamn superhero film? Why are the creators wasting their time showing Captain Marvel being oppressed by the man when they could be showing how powerful and heroic she is? Am I getting the character wrong? She's equipped with super strength and speed, can fly and project raw energy, correct? Why would you show the character being talked down to by anyone? Are you trying to make her look weak? Please don't tell me the writers made the patriarchy Captain Marvel's kryptonite. Mr. Jones continues, no one can accuse Captain Marvel of being overly emotional. It would have been well served by a bit more of the outsized feeling the superpowered heroine at its center is told to tamp down. Instead, it's a solidly constructed and engaging bit of scaffolding that only occasionally reaches the pop art delirium of the best of those films. Several of those moments come by virtue of a cat named Goose. Oh snap, did he just complain that the character isn't emotional enough? Damn, Mr. Jones, you need to commit to the bit, sir. But the best part here is when he describes the film as a solidly constructed and engaging bit of scaffolding that only occasionally reaches the pop art delirium of the best of those films. That is not a compliment. This sounds like the story is serviceable at best. And to top it all off, Oliver admits the cat, Goose, provides several of the most heroic scenes in the movie. Why the hell isn't Goose Captain Marvel? He certainly emotes better than Brie Larson, and he wouldn't have put his paw in his mouth over and over along the press tour. Shit, I would have drove 4 hours to see that movie opening weekend. Jones then notes, that said, it has several things going for it that those movies do not. For starters, it's set in the 1990s. In addition to allowing the filmmaking team of Anna Bodden and Ryan Fleck to wax nostalgic about the age of Blockbuster Video, Rock the Vote, and the Alta Vista search engine. He also states, Captain Marvel doesn't need to overly contort itself to fit the existing storyline of the other movies. It can largely exist on its own terms. This is probably the lamest compliment I've seen handed to the film. There are films where the time setting is very important, let's say a Dunkirk or Robin Hood, movies with a distinct period need for accuracy. Captain Marvel ain't one of them. This movie could have been placed in any era, on any number of fictional planets, or in the future. It was purposefully set in the 90s because the creators knew they needed a nostalgia draw because even the MCU might not generate enough interest in the character. I also like how purposely avoiding the other MCU films in the timeline is considered a strength. I call that a lack of imagination and creativity. He later frames the film's contemporaries. While it may be a Marvel movie, it shares a deeper spiritual DNA with movies like Memento and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind than it does, say, Ant-Man. I'm sure in Jones' feminist Campa echo chamber, this is an exciting revelation, but in the real world, where people go to MCU films to see superhero fare, this is a huge red flag. Now, some MCU films have transcended the superhero genre. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Ant-Man actually come to mind. But they didn't enter the realm of artsy Oscar bait indie films. Don't get me wrong, I personally like both films, especially Memento. The irony of Jones listing Memento is not lost on me. The film's writer-director, Christopher Nolan, tried his hand in the superhero genre himself, and not surprisingly, avoided a Memento-style take on Batman and chose to instead go with a more gritty, realistic take on the superhero genre. If the best director of his generation decided to steer clear of this territory, I'm not sure why the creative team behind Half Nelson and Mississippi Grind decided to wade into the waters. Perhaps Nolan just doesn't have the chops to pull it off. Jones then addresses Larson's performance. The film has some noticeable drawbacks that its Marvel brethren do not, starting with the performances. Larson never quite gets a hold of who she wants Danvers to be. She keeps shifting from glumly studious to smirky and detached. Only MCU newcomer Lashana Lynch, playing a fellow pilot who is Danvers' best friend and surrogate family, truly stands out. Nice to see he doesn't even try to polish the turd of a performance Brie Larson has put forth, which fans have saw coming since the first trailer. Calling her performance glumly studious to smirky and detached makes it sound like Larson forgot she was acting and just played herself on set. It is nice to hear Lashana Lynch, who plays the granddaughter of Monica Rambeau, the character many fans believe should have been the star of the film, stands out. Oliver Jones then addresses the film's customers. The same cannot be said of the response it has engendered ahead of its release, especially among a small and vocal contingent who, for the first time in their lives, are feeling threatened by the inclusion of people who don't look like them in their pop culture fantasies. This is more of the same drivel we hear anytime a female-led production gets any type of negative feedback, or if all of society doesn't fall in line like we're told. We're all threatened by inclusion. Mr. Jones' mind is so clearly filled with feminist conspiracy, for him to state something else could rip through the very fabric of time and reality. He ends the review with some honest truth. This flawed but still entertaining film's chief asset is its representation of a young woman. When she finally takes literal flight towards the end of the movie, eyes and hair aglow with unimaginable power, it is the movie's first true moment of both visual poetry and catharsis. The film is very flawed, but since it's a young woman, Oliver Jones gives it a pass. He even describes the movie's first true moment of both visual poetry and catharsis as happening towards the end of the film. Likely the last 30 minutes or so. I guess the first 90 minutes of flawed tripe was just fluffer to get everyone ready for the 30 entertaining minutes of the movie in the runtime. Did that sound like an above average movie to you? Almost everything Jones mentions as good has nothing to do with the film's quality, but about how it validates his opinions on feminism and the patriarchy. Yet this film critic gave it a 3 out of 4 rating, or 75%, based on his own personal bias and love of social justice. If we take all his talk of things that don't affect the film's quality, he describes it as Captain Marvel's weakness is the patriarchy, lacking heroic emotion, with the exception of Goose the Cat, as a solidly constructed and engaging bit of scaffolding, containing 90s nostalgia, which doesn't serve the story, not fitting in the MCU timeline, being more akin to Memento and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind than a superhero film, bad performances from its lead actors, and flawed but still entertaining. Now that sounds like a real recommend if I've ever heard one. Let's be honest, Jones was going to give this film a positive review no matter what. He's a highly biased critic, and this film represents a lot of what is likely taught on his overwhelmingly white female campus. In the future, I suggest doing a bit of research on journalists and critics because it usually doesn't take long to see their angle. Of course, these are just my takes. What's yours? Do you agree Oliver Jones' bio screams bias towards this film? Do you think the way he describes the film matches the score he gave? Are you planning on seeing Captain Marvel? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.